Welcome to Movie List, and today we're counting down 20 movie mistakes that were totally intentional. For this list, we're looking at those moments that are often thought of as a mistake, but the actors or directors definitely knew what they were doing. Can you think of a real movie mistake? Let us know in the comments. Number 20. Leo makes a bloody mess in Django Unchained. Now, this movie definitely took some creative liberties with history, no doubt about it. And you know what happens when you start playing fast and loose with the facts. Mistakes start popping up left and right, but sometimes those mistakes are just too good to cut out. There's this one scene where Calvin Candy gives an intense speech about slave genetics. In a fit of rage, he slams his hand on the table, accidentally smashing a glass in the process.
Lay your palms flat on that tabletop. If you lift those palms off that turtle shell tabletop, Mr. Pooch is gonna let loose with both barrels of that sawed off.
Leo was so into the role that he actually cut his hand for real on the broken glass. But did he freak out? Not at all. He just calmly cleaned up the blood and glass from his hand with a napkin, all while staying in character.
That was the fun part, is watching their reactions. Honestly, because boom, it happened, and then I opened my hand, and then blood starts pouring everywhere.
That take was so good that it actually made it into the final cut of the movie. Number 19. Neo's reflection in The Matrix. There's a scene where Neo and Morpheus have a conversation in the construct, a white room representing Adam Wilborn's brain. At first, Morpheus wears matte gray glasses, but within seconds, they switch to shiny black reflective ones. This wasn't a mistake, though. The glasses were intentionally switched. For the initial zoom shot, matte glasses were used to avoid the camera's reflection. After that, they didn't need to worry about it, so Morpheus got to rock his cool, shiny specs. It's a small detail that shows the thought put into the movie. The Matrix creators wanted Morpheus to look sleek without any reflections. Number 18. Electric torches in Titanic. Titanic was a masterpiece in terms of its attention to detail. Every frame was carefully crafted to immerse us in the tragic story. Sure, historical accuracy matters, but let's be real, the main goal was to entertain us. So, when they were shooting that scene where the lifeboats returned to the wreckage, James Cameron had a little challenge on his hands. They needed enough light to capture the haunting atmosphere, but lifeboats back then didn't have bulky electric torches. Nope, they were equipped with good old oil-based lamps. Cameron knew this, and he also knew that those lamps wouldn't provide the amount of light needed for the scene. It would have been too dark to see anything.
Don't artists need good light?
So he decided to give one of the lifeboats a big lantern-style electric torch to illuminate the scene. Yeah, it wasn't historically accurate, but at least we could see. Number 17. Yellow-nosed German planes in Dunkirk. This Christopher Nolan movie is about the historical events of the Dunkirk evacuation, and for the most part, it's pretty spot on. But there's one thing that got a lot of people talking. They were wondering why the German planes in the film had these yellow noses, which wasn't accurate for the time. In reality, those planes weren't painted yellow until about a month after the whole Dunkirk operation. It's hard to get every detail right in a historical movie.
Certainly taking on a historical event, it was a very different thing for me.
But actually, it was an intentional choice from Nolan. It helped the viewers distinguish between different planes in the air. And let's be honest, with all the action happening on screen, it would have been chaotic trying to figure out who was shooting at who without those yellow noses. Number 16. Three-fingered T-Rexes in King Kong. Peter Jackson's King Kong remake wasn't exactly aiming for scientific accuracy. We're talking a massive ape going toe-to-toe with dinosaurs. Normally, we just see the monsters in the movies as just that, a scary being to run from. But hey, there are always those eagle-eyed viewers who notice the details. You see, in the real world, a T-Rex has only 2 clawed digits on its hands, but Jackson, being the creative genius he is, made a deliberate choice to give his T-Rex-looking dino 3 fingers. It's actually a tribute, as he wanted to pay homage to the original 1933 version of King Kong. In that classic film, the T-Rex also had 3 fingers. He thought it would be cool to bring back that 3-fingered lizard for a modern audience, and just like that, the T-Rex in his King Kong got a little nod to its cinematic roots. Number 15. Dust storms on Mars in The Martian. In The Martian, Matt Damon is left completely stranded and alone on Mars because of a rather intense dust storm.
This storm's gonna be a lot worse.
But it turns out, in real life, things wouldn't be quite as dramatic. American scientist Dave Lavery is an expert at everything related to solar system exploration, and according to him, while dust storms faster than 100 miles per hour do happen on Mars, the atmosphere is super thin, so all that wind power doesn't pack the same punch as it would on Earth. In fact, a 100 miles per hour wind on Mars would feel more like a measly 11 miles per hour breeze here on Earth. So it's not going to be blowing things around and wrecking stuff like in the movie. While the filmmakers clearly knew this, they still decided to include one anyway, just to kickstart the movie. Number 14. The escalator slide in Skyfall. Remember that awesome chase scene in Skyfall? You know, the one where Daniel Craig's Bond is hot on the heels of Javier Bardem's Silva sprinting through the London Underground like there's no tomorrow? Well, at one point in the chase, Bond and Silva smoothly slide down the center of the escalator. But in reality, things wouldn't have gone down quite as smoothly, as those little signs in the middle of the escalators are there to stop people from sliding down. So if Bond and Silva had attempted that slide with the signs, they would have had some pretty unfortunate collisions with those signs, right where it hurts the most. Ouch! But that's part of the job.
It's a physical role, and I get bashed up, and in fact, I get injured, but the stunt team get injured all the time, and thankfully, we all walk away.
And hey, it made for one of the best chase scenes of all time. Number 13. Jack's pirate brand in Pirates of the Caribbean. In the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, The Curse of the Black Pearl, there's a crazy scene where Captain Jack Sparrow saves Elizabeth Swann from drowning. But despite his heroic act, he finds himself facing off against James Norrington and a bunch of Port Royal soldiers. Now, just as Norrington is about to thank Jack by offering his hand for a shake, our favorite pirate decides to reveal something unexpected. He rolls up his sleeve, and there it is, a brand on his arm in the shape of a P.
The mark of treason.
This brand was given to him by the East India Trading Company, marking him forever as a pirate. And this branding thing was actually something the real East India Company did back in the day, but they didn't brand pirates on the arm like Jack. Nope, they went straight for the forehead. Now, you might be wondering why they changed the location of the brand for the movie. Well, think about it. Having Johnny Depp run around with a massive P on his forehead for the entire film would have been quite distracting, to say the least. So the filmmakers decided to be a bit more subtle. They relocated the brand to Jack's arm instead, making it less in your face and allowing us to focus on the swashbuckling adventures without a ginormous letter hogging the spotlight. Number 12. The Trap Door in The Wizard of Oz. Movie making has come a long way since the release of The Wizard of Oz, and when you look back, you can't help but notice a few things that seem off. Take the scene where the Wicked Witch dramatically exits Munchkinland, for example. She disappears in a puff of red smoke, surrounded by flames. It's a cool effect, no doubt, but some things don't make sense. First, the smoke starts billowing before Margaret Hamilton even gets into position, and if you pay close attention, you can spot the trapdoor they used right there. But there's a reason they couldn't fix those mistakes. Turns out, poor Margaret Hamilton suffered some serious burns during an accident. So they had to work with what they had. When she was able to return, she refused to do any more fire-based stunts. Number 11. The coordinates in The Fate of the Furious. Right at the beginning of the movie, they showed an aerial shot of a forested area, and there are these coordinates displayed in the bottom left corner.
I'm sending you the coordinates. Head there immediately.
Now, if you're curious enough and you decide to plug these coordinates into an online map, you might be a little disappointed since they don't lead you to some hidden forest near a sports field as shown in the movie. But it's not a mistake by the filmmakers at all. It turns out those guys intentionally put in the coordinates for a very specific location, the Universal Studios theme park in California. Yep, the same studio that distributes the Fast franchise. It's like a sly little Easter egg just for the fans. Number 10. The door in The Birds. Alfred Hitchcock was a total pro at hinting at things rather than showing them directly on screen. And that's why the ending scene in The Birds is a prime example. There's this moment where the survivors leave the house, and Mitch goes ahead and opens a front door that's not even there. Crazy, right? But he actually acts like he's opening the door, and then when they walk through the doorway, surprise! There's no door.
That's the damnedest thing I ever saw.
Hitchcock intentionally did this to engage the audience's imagination and get them involved in the story. And well, it worked. Now, you might be wondering why no one noticed the missing door. Well, Hitchcock had a clever trick up his sleeve. He removed the door to allow the camera to smoothly move through it, but he used light in a way that made it seem like the door was opened by Mitch. So, Mitch goes through the motions of opening an imaginary door, and the audience goes along with it, completely buying into the illusion. Number 9. The Leap of Death in The Return of the King. In The Lord of the Rings, there are some iconic deaths, like Boromir's last stand and King Theoden's tragic end. But the most gruesome one has to be Denethor's demise. Believing his sons were dead, he decides to kill himself on Faramir's funeral pyre. However, Gandalf saves Faramir, and Denethor, engulfed in flames, runs toward the city's prow to throw himself off. But the distance he covers while on fire is totally impossible. Even with adrenaline, he couldn't have made that leap. But Peter Jackson, the director, intentionally included those dramatic shots early on. He wanted the crazy visuals, even if they didn't seem quite realistic. So, we saw Denethor's blazing escape and insane jump.
Death is just another path, one that we all must take.
Number 8. Crash barriers in The Matrix Reloaded. One of the best parts in The Matrix Reloaded is that highway scene, when the twins go head-to-head with Morpheus and his katana. The stunts in that scene are seriously off the charts. But then, the mistake happens. When Morpheus dodges the twins' car and flips it like a boss, there's a little inconsistency. If you pay attention to the shots from behind Morpheus, you can totally see these crash barriers on the narrow road. But when they show the wide shot, poof! No barrier in sight between the scene and the camera. It turns out it's not some sloppy mistake. It was actually a deliberate move. They purposely removed the barrier so that we could see that slow-motion shot of Morpheus slicing through the car. Then, like magic, the barrier makes a comeback right after. It just goes to show how much work goes into making these movies feel special, and how much detail the production thinks about.
I think they're a very unique entertainment. I think, the visual style, and when I say that, I mean the cinematography, the costume design, the production design, the marriage of all of these practical design elements that go into the thesis of the film.
Number 7. The fake knife in Scream 2. In Scream 2, there's this scene that takes place at a crazy fan screening of a movie called Stab. Stab is actually a movie within the movie, and it's based on the events of the first Scream film. In it, they actually recreate the death of Casey Becker, who was played by Drew Barrymore in the original Scream. But when Ghostface stabs her in the chest, the knife is totally fake. It's retractable and doesn't even leave a mark on Casey. Before you think it's a mistake, director Wes Craven actually did this on purpose. You see, in the first Scream, when Casey gets stabbed, there's no blood in the initial shot. It's only later, when she's lying on the ground, that her sweater is covered in red. Fans actually pointed out this mistake in the first movie, so Craven decided to have some fun and recreate it in the sequel. Number 6. The elevator scene in Men in Black 2. After Jay rescues Kay from the post office in Men in Black, he brings him back to the MIB headquarters. And it's like a flipped version of the first movie, where Jay himself sees all those crazy aliens in the HQ. To add to the effect, they step out of the elevator onto a raised platform, giving them a sweet vantage point. But things get a bit messy. Later on, when Jay and Kay return to the HQ to face off against Serlina, the elevator drops them off at ground level. Looks weird, doesn't it? But it's actually on purpose. They wanted to surprise them with a trash can robot armed to the teeth. And how would that work if the elevator stayed on the elevated level? So, dropping them off on the ground floor was a tactical move, allowing the trash can robot to shoot the elevator up. It was a little touch that ended up making an otherwise boring scene better. Number 5. The missing gashes in Tarzan. Tarzan found himself in a pretty intense scuffle with a seriously ticked-off leopard. Now, this leopard wasn't messing around and even scratched Tarzan with its sharp claws, leaving some pretty deep, visible gashes on his chest. Ouch! After Tarzan took care of that leopard and carried its lifeless body away, those gnarly slash marks on his chest magically disappeared. It was as if they were never there in the first place. The same happened with the leopard itself, who suffered a cut during the scuffle, only to have it magically fade away moments later. Why would Disney do this? Well, it all boiled down to their strict rules and guidelines. You see, Disney has a reputation for being family-friendly, and that means they weren't big fans of showing a lot of blood. So they decided to get rid of those wounds on Tarzan and the leopard. Number 4. English signs in Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope. In the Star Wars universe, they like to keep things alien-looking. Those display consoles don't use English annotations or instructions. They're all about those funky symbols and whatnot. And honestly, it adds to the whole outer-worldly vibe.
And just to avoid any more female advice, we gotta be able to get out of here. Well, let's get moving.
No biggie though, because you don't really need to know what those displays say. You can still get the general idea, you know? But when Obi-Wan deactivates the Death Star's force field, the tractor beam gauge, labeled Power, is clearly in English. That was actually done on purpose. They wanted the audience to understand that this console was super important and could grasp what Obi-Wan was up to. Number 3. The incorrectly placed hut in The Prisoner of Azkaban. When they changed directors for the third Harry Potter film, there was a clear attempt to capture more of the book's vibe in the visual designs. But it led to some controversy among fans. They moved Hagrid's hut and the Whomping Willow, which fans thought was a major misstep, since J.K. Rowling's own design notes had them much closer to the castle. But it turns out the new location was really needed, as the raised vantage point allowed Harry, Ron, and Hermione to witness a crucial Buckbeak rescue. Plus, they had to make the time travel element look convincing. So, the decision to move the hut actually made sense for the story. Sure, it might not be technically accurate according to the books, but it worked better for the director's vision.
I knew I was better than hair.
Number 2. The missing cat in Alien. At the end of Alien, Ripley tries to escape the Nostromo before it goes boom, and she makes sure to take the ship's cat, Jones, in a little carrier. But here's the thing. If you pay close attention during one shot, you'll realize that there's no cat in the carrier. Like, seriously, it's empty. You see, a few seconds later, there's this intense fire shooting out of the hallway, and the director of the movie didn't want the poor kitty to have a traumatic experience. Number 1. The multiple personalities in Identity. In the scene where we meet the main character, Ed Dakota, he's working as a limousine driver and takes a client for a ride.
But they clearly did not read my deal.
But right before Ed gets into a car accident, take a look at the speedometer in his car. It says 0, even though he's clearly driving at a decent speed. Even the gear shift is in the park position. Identity has this crazy plot twist where most of the characters, including Ed, are not real. They're all just different personalities in the mind of a killer named Malcolm Rivers. It's all hidden so well that you might not even notice it until the big reveal.
It's kind of fun to have everything, to be on a tightrope where, you know, if you screw it up at all and the audience knows what's going on, the movie's dead.
These personalities are fighting, in his head, to become the dominant one. So it totally makes sense that the speedometer in Ed's car doesn't show anything, because, well, neither the car nor Ed actually exist. Fake car, fake speedometer, it tracks. Check out this next video from us by clicking the video on screen now. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to see all of our latest videos.